Billionaire CEO sat alone at the wedding until Black Waitress whispered, "Pretend you're with me." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. This is one that proves that sometimes the smallest of acts can change everything. Imagine this, a glamorous wedding at one of the most exclusive venues in New York. The chandeliers sparkle above, the guests are dressed in their finest, and the air is filled with the buzz of celebration. But there's one person who doesn't belong. The billionaire CEO, Robert Keller, sits alone at his table, isolated and lost in his own thoughts. Around him, everyone is engaged in conversation, laughing, dancing, but Robert remains untouched by the joy around him. His suit, a perfect shade of navy blue, only seems to highlight his detachment from the world. He's a man who's built an empire, a man who commands attention wherever he goes. Yet here, in the midst of the most extravagant celebration, he feels invisible. It's not because he's ignored. Quite the opposite. His reputation precedes him. It's because, despite all the wealth and power, Robert Keller has never truly known connection. People are drawn to him because of what he represents, not because of who he is. As he sits there, his eyes scanning the room, he feels the weight of his own success. But there's no one to share it with. The loneliness in his eyes is evident, though no one dares to acknowledge it. The guests around him are too busy focusing on their own lives to notice the emptiness in his. At a distance, the waitstaff moves fluidly, refilling drinks, clearing plates, and going about their business. One of them, a young black woman named Maya, moves effortlessly between the tables, her eyes trained on the room's activities. She's not just any waitress. She's observant, intelligent, and carries herself with a quiet dignity that most would overlook. Maya has seen many like Robert Keller in her time working in high-end venues. But something about the way he sits there, disconnected, catches her attention. She notices the subtle signs of his discomfort, the way his hand nervously fidgets with his drink, the way his gaze flickers from one guest to another, never quite settling. She also notices how no one approaches him. He's a man alone in a sea of people. As Maya walks past his table, she catches his eye for just a moment. For a split second, their gazes meet, and something shifts. He seems almost surprised that someone has noticed him. Maya doesn't say a word. Instead, she simply walks by, but in that brief moment, she senses the deep loneliness within him. It's then that an idea comes to her. She stops, turns around, and walks back to Robert's table. Without hesitation, she leans in and whispers, "Pretend you're with me." Her voice is soft, but it carries the weight of something much deeper, an invitation, an offer of connection. Robert blinks, momentarily stunned by her words. He wasn't expecting this, not from someone like her. His mind races for a moment, trying to comprehend why she would say such a thing. But as their eyes meet again, he finds himself nodding almost involuntarily. He's not sure why, but something in her presence feels different. Without another word, Maya moves behind him and gently guides him to join the dance floor. As they move among the guests, it's as though the world suddenly shifts. The whispers stop, and the room takes notice. Maya's simple act has broken the invisible barrier between Robert and the world around him. For the first time in years, Robert feels seen, not for his wealth or his status, but as a person. And though the night has only just begun, everything about it has already changed. As Robert and Maya moved through the crowd, something strange began to happen. The air in the room, once heavy with the sound of clinking glasses and casual chatter, seemed to shift. The guests, who had previously ignored Robert or merely acknowledged his presence with polite nods, now turned their attention to him. It wasn't because of his wealth or status. No, it was something different. Maya's presence beside him, the quiet way she led him through the crowd, transformed the atmosphere in an almost magical way. It was as if they were no longer simply two people at a wedding. They were part of a story that no one could ignore. Robert found himself at the center of it all, but for the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider. He felt seen. Maya's hand on his back, guiding him through the crowd, was a small but powerful gesture. She wasn't just taking him to the dance floor. She was taking him into a world where he didn't have to hide behind his title or wealth. He could just be. He could just exist, without the pressure of always being the man in charge. They reached the dance floor, and the music began to play, slow and melodic. For a moment, it was just the two of them, moving in time with the rhythm. Robert, who had never been one to let his guard down, found himself relaxing. He was no longer the billionaire CEO. He was just a man dancing with someone who saw him for who he truly was. Maya, on the other hand, moved with a grace that seemed to tell its own story. She wasn't just performing the role of a waitress. She was someone who understood the weight of loneliness, the quiet struggles that went unnoticed. As they swayed together, she didn't say much, but there was something in her eyes that made Robert feel like she understood him in a way no one else ever had. The world around them continued, but it felt distant, almost like a dream. Maya's calm demeanor, her quiet confidence, made Robert feel like he was part of something bigger than himself. He looked at her, a sense of gratitude swelling in his chest. It was as if she had pulled him from the shadows, not with grand gestures, but with a simple, honest connection. He felt a warmth spread through him, a warmth he hadn't known in years. This wasn't about wealth. This wasn't about power. This was about two people, in a room full of strangers, who shared a quiet moment of understanding. As the song played on, Robert realized that this was the first time in a long while that he hadn't been watching life happen from the sidelines. He was in it, participating, connecting, and feeling something real. The moment felt timeless, as though it could go on forever. But soon, the song ended, and the spell broke. The room returned to its usual rhythm, but for Robert, the world had changed. He didn't want to let go of that feeling, that sense of belonging. Maya looked up at him and smiled, her eyes full of unspoken words. She didn't need to say anything. Her smile said it all. She had given him something he hadn't known he needed. And in return, Robert found himself wanting to give something back. The night wasn't over, and neither was their story. He knew that somehow, in that fleeting moment, something had shifted. He wasn't just the CEO anymore. He was Robert, a man who had been seen. And Maya had given him that gift. As they stepped off the dance floor, Robert felt a sense of clarity he hadn't experienced in years. The loneliness that had once consumed him seemed a little less heavy. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but for the first time, he felt open to the possibilities. And as the night unfolded, Robert knew that this encounter would stay with him far longer than any business deal ever could. As the night wore on, Robert found himself sitting at a table with a drink in his hand, but his mind was elsewhere. He had just danced with Maya, a simple moment that had completely shifted his perspective. He had always believed that his success, his fortune, was what defined him. But that night, in the company of a woman he barely knew, he realized it was connection, not wealth, that made a person truly rich. The music in the background was still playing, but it felt distant now, as if it were part of a different world. Robert stared at his glass, swirling the amber liquid, deep in thought. He had spent so many years building his empire, focusing on every dollar and every deal, thinking that they would be the key to his happiness. But here, surrounded by luxury and admiration, he felt more alone than ever. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. That something was Maya. Maya, who had given him more in those few minutes of dancing than all the business deals and high-powered meetings of his life combined. He looked around the room again, watching the other guests, but this time it felt different. He noticed their laughter, their casual interactions, but it felt empty. He wasn't interested in the superficiality of it anymore. He was looking for something more genuine. He wondered how Maya saw the world. Was it the same way? Did she feel the weight of expectation, the way people constantly judged her based on her job, her appearance, her race? He had spent most of his life judging people based on what they could give him, what they could do for him. But Maya had shown him something else entirely. She had given him the gift of being seen, of being acknowledged for who he really was, not just for what he had. Robert felt a surge of gratitude. He knew he had to find her again. He needed to know more about her life, and how she viewed the world. He needed to thank her, but he also needed to know how to give back. He couldn't just take. That wasn't how he wanted to live anymore. Robert stood up from the table and walked across the room, his eyes scanning the crowd. He wasn't sure where to start, but his feet carried him toward the kitchen. He remembered seeing Maya slip through the swinging doors earlier. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The kitchen was buzzing with activity, but when Maya saw him, she stopped. She had a surprised look on her face, but she quickly masked it with her usual calm demeanor. "Mr. Keller," she said politely, her eyes meeting his. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," Robert replied, his voice sincere. "I just wanted to thank you, for earlier. For helping me see something I've been missing." Maya raised an eyebrow, slightly confused. "I don't understand," she said softly. Robert took a breath and stepped closer, his voice lowered as he spoke from the heart. "You made me realize that there's more to life than just power and money. I've been chasing the wrong things. But tonight, with you, I felt human. I felt like I belonged. And I just wanted to say thank you for that." Maya looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, a small smile appeared on her lips. "You're welcome," she said quietly. "But you're not the only one who learned something tonight." Robert's curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Maya hesitated, then spoke, her voice calm, but with an undertone of strength. "I've spent my life working to prove that I'm more than what people see on the surface. That I'm more than just a waitress, more than just someone they expect to serve them." Robert listened intently, realizing that they shared more in common than he had ever expected. "I know what it's like to feel invisible," Maya continued. "But tonight, I made you visible. And you made me feel seen. I don't expect anything from you. But sometimes, that's all people need. Just someone to notice them." Robert was taken aback by her words. He had thought he was the one receiving a lesson, but in truth, Maya had been teaching him all along. They both stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared understanding hanging in the air. Finally, Robert spoke again, his voice softer now. "Maya, I want to change. I want to do better. I don't want to just be the CEO anymore. I want to be someone who makes a difference." Maya smiled, but this time it was warmer, more genuine. "You already have, Mr. Keller. You just don't realize it yet." With those words, Robert felt something shift inside him. He didn't need to be anyone other than himself. And in that moment, he realized that this was the beginning of something new, something more important than anything he had ever accomplished in his business life. It was the beginning of a journey toward real connection, toward understanding, and most importantly, toward becoming a better version of himself. The days following the wedding felt different for Robert. He couldn't shake the feeling that Maya had unlocked something inside him that he had long buried under layers of success and wealth. The world that had once seemed so clear, business meetings, contracts, and power plays, now seemed like a distant memory, like a world he no longer belonged to. It wasn't just the dance with Maya, nor the quiet words she shared with him in the kitchen. It was something deeper, something about the connection they shared. He couldn't stop thinking about how she had made him feel seen, not as a billionaire or a CEO, but as a human being. Robert had always been a man who controlled everything: his company, his employees, his image. But now, he realized that he had no control over the most important thing: how he felt about himself. He had spent so long chasing success that he had forgotten what it was like to be present in the moment, to truly connect with another person. As the weeks went by, Robert found himself visiting the Bayou Spoon more and more. It was a small, unassuming restaurant, not the kind of place he would normally visit. But there was something about it that called to him. He would sit at a corner table, watching Maya as she moved gracefully between the tables, her presence calming and steady. Every time their eyes met, a quiet understanding passed between them, but neither spoke much. Robert didn't need to. Maya had already shown him more about life than any business meeting ever had. One afternoon, as Robert was finishing his meal, Maya approached his table. There was a calmness in her demeanor, but also something else, a quiet confidence that Robert had come to admire. "Mr. Keller," she said, "I've been thinking about our conversation that night. You said you wanted to change." Robert looked up at her, his heart beating a little faster. "I do," he said simply. "I want to be someone who makes a real difference, who doesn't just take from others, but gives something back." Maya nodded, as if she had been expecting him to say that. "The first step is simple," she said, her voice soft but sure. "Start seeing people for who they truly are, not what they can do for you. Take the time to understand them, to listen to their stories. You've been focused on the wrong kind of success." Robert sat back in his chair, absorbing her words. It wasn't just about business, he realized. It was about humanity. He had spent so much of his life looking for validation through power and money that he had overlooked the most important part of being human: connection. He had ignored the people who were always there, quietly doing their work, living their lives. The people who didn't ask for anything in return, but who could change your life with a simple act of kindness. Maya had already taught him that lesson. Now, it was up to him to take it to heart. "I think I understand," Robert said slowly. "And I want to do more than just understand. I want to help." Maya smiled, but this time it was different. It wasn't just a polite smile. It was one of approval, of mutual respect. "Helping doesn't always mean giving money or power," she said. "Sometimes, it just means showing up. Being there when people need you, listening when they have something to say, and being the person who stands up for what's right, even when it's hard." Robert nodded, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about his next big deal or his next acquisition. He was thinking about how he could help others, how he could be a better man, a better human being. Maya had shown him that there was more to life than the things he had spent so long chasing. And now, he was ready to live it. As Robert left the restaurant that afternoon, he made a promise to himself. He would take Maya's words to heart. He would spend the rest of his life looking beyond the surface, looking beyond the titles and the money, and finding the people who mattered. The ones who didn't ask for anything, but who had so much to offer. And, most importantly, he would find the courage to be the man who could make a difference, not through his wealth, but through his actions. Maya had shown him the way, and he was ready to follow it. In the weeks that followed, Robert found himself thinking about Maya more and more. What started as a brief moment of connection at a wedding had grown into something more profound. He had begun to realize that true wealth wasn't measured by the size of his bank account or the number of deals he could close. It was measured by the relationships he built and the impact he made on the lives of others. Maya's words echoed in his mind. Start seeing people for who they truly are, not what they can do for you. This simple advice had started to transform the way he saw the world. He began to take note of the people around him, the ones who served him at restaurants, the workers who kept his company running, the small business owners he once overlooked. Robert found himself stopping to have real conversations with them, asking about their lives, their dreams, their struggles. He wasn't just making business deals anymore. He was making connections. One afternoon, Robert was walking through one of his company's buildings when he noticed one of the janitors, an older man named Frank, struggling to lift a heavy box. Without thinking, Robert rushed over to help. As they both struggled to move the box, Frank looked up at him with surprise. "Mr. Keller," he said, "I didn't expect you to help." Robert smiled, his hand still holding the box. "I've been learning a lot about what it means to really see people," he replied. "And right now I see you." Frank's eyes softened, and for the first time, Robert realized just how much he had taken for granted. He had spent so many years focusing on his own success that he had never considered the people who made that success possible. That moment with Frank stayed with Robert long after he left the building. It was a small act, but it meant something. It was proof that he was changing, that he was beginning to live the values that Maya had shown him. A few days later, Robert decided to invite Maya out for dinner. He knew it wasn't just a gesture of gratitude. It was an acknowledgement of how much she had helped him see a new way of living. As they sat down at a quiet table in a cozy cafe, Robert looked across at Maya, her calm presence once again giving him a sense of peace. "Maya," he said, "I can't thank you enough for everything you've taught me. You've changed my life in ways I can't even put into words." Maya smiled softly, her eyes kind. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," she said. "You did it yourself. You just needed to wake up to the world around you." Robert thought about that for a moment. It was true. Maya had shown him the path, but it was up to him to walk it. And as he sat there, he realized that he wasn't just walking it alone. He had people like Maya beside him, helping him along the way. "I've been thinking about something," Robert said, his voice a little more serious. "I want to do more. I want to give back in a way that really matters." Maya raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Robert took a deep breath. "I want to start a foundation, a place where people can come together and make a real difference. Not just with money, but with their time, their skills, their hearts." Maya was quiet for a moment, and then she nodded. "I think that's a great idea. But remember, it's not about how much you give. It's about the intention behind it." Robert smiled. "I know, and I think I finally understand what that means." That night, As Robert walked home from the cafe, he felt a sense of excitement that he hadn't felt in years. He was ready to take the next step in his journey. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be quick, but he was ready to make a difference. He had learned the hard way that wealth and success alone didn't bring fulfillment. It was the connections we made, the kindness we shared, and the impact we left behind that truly mattered. And as he thought about Maya, he knew that his life had been forever changed by her quiet wisdom, her generosity of spirit, and her ability to see him for who he really was. He was no longer just a CEO. He was someone who had the power to change lives, for the better. Months passed since Robert had started on his new path, and the changes in his life were undeniable. His company was thriving, but not in the way it once had been. It wasn't just about profits anymore, it was about people. Robert had taken the time to get to know his employees, his clients, even strangers. Every interaction now felt more meaningful. The foundation he had started was beginning to take shape, but it was more than just a project to him. It was a commitment. A commitment to making a difference, to doing more than just giving away money. It was about creating a community, a place where people could find purpose and connection, regardless of their background or circumstances. The foundation focused on helping those who had been overlooked, ignored, or dismissed by society. Robert's approach was simple. He didn't want to just give people charity. He wanted to empower them, to give them the tools to change their lives and, in turn, change the world. It was a bold vision, one that took time, effort, and resources to bring to life. But Robert was no longer the man who was driven solely by the need for success. He had found something far more fulfilling: purpose. One day, Maya came by the office to check in on the foundation's progress. As she walked into Robert's office, she noticed how different he looked. There was a certain calmness about him, a peace that hadn't been there before. Robert stood up and walked over to greet her, a warm smile on his face. "Maya," he said, "I can't thank you enough for everything you've done. This foundation, it's growing, but it's not just the money or the people involved. It's the idea that we're making a real difference. And I owe all of that to you." Maya shook her head slightly, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I didn't do it for thanks, Robert. I only showed you a way to see things differently. You've done all the work." Robert's smile faded slightly, his eyes sincere. "I might have started this, but I couldn't have done it without you. You made me see the importance of connection, of truly understanding people. I was so caught up in my own world, my own success, that I never saw what was right in front of me." Maya's gaze softened, and she placed a hand on his shoulder. "We all get caught up in our own world sometimes, but it's how we choose to see things that makes the difference." Robert nodded, his eyes reflective. "I think that's what I'm finally starting to understand. It's not about the power or the deals. It's about the people we help, the lives we touch." As they sat down together, Maya asked, "What's next for you, Robert? What do you want this foundation to become?" Robert thought for a moment, his mind already racing with ideas. "I want it to be a place where people can learn, where they can find new opportunities, where they can see that they are capable of so much more than they think. And I want to keep pushing myself to make it happen. To be the kind of leader who leads with compassion, who sees people for who they really are, not just for what they can do." Maya smiled, her eyes proud. "That's exactly what the world needs right now. More people who see others for who they truly are. Not just as a means to an end, but as valuable individuals with potential." Robert leaned back in his chair, feeling a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in years. He was no longer chasing after titles or accolades. He was focused on something far more important. As the conversation continued, they spoke about the future of the foundation, and Robert felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long while, he was excited about what lay ahead. He was ready to put everything he had into making the world a better place, not just for the wealthy or the powerful, but for everyone. And as he looked at Maya, he realized that the journey they had started together was just beginning. They had both come so far, and there was so much more they could accomplish together. With Maya by his side, Robert knew he could achieve things he had never thought possible. They were building something bigger than themselves, a legacy of compassion, empowerment, and true connection. As the foundation continued to grow, so did Robert's transformation. The change he had experienced over the past several months was profound. His focus had shifted from accumulating wealth and power to fostering genuine connections, creating opportunities, and helping others see their worth. Maya's guidance had given him a new purpose, and now, every day felt like an opportunity to live up to that newfound mission. One morning, Robert stood by the large windows of his office, looking out at the city skyline. He had spent so much of his life consumed by the drive for more money, more influence, more recognition. But now, as he gazed out at the city, he saw it differently. He saw not just the buildings, but the people, the lives behind every window, every door, every street. He had spent so much of his life viewing the world through the lens of what could be gained, but now, he saw it through the lens of what could be given. It was a humbling realization. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of his phone buzzing. It was a text from Maya. "Are you free for lunch today? I have something important to discuss." Robert smiled at the message. Over the past few months, their bond had grown beyond professional. He respected Maya not only for her wisdom but for her authenticity, her compassion, and the way she always spoke from the heart. He quickly typed back, "I'll be there in 30 minutes. When they met at a quiet cafe in the city, Maya looked more radiant than ever. Her calm demeanor had always been a source of comfort to him, but today, there was a certain energy about her that caught his attention. She had a sparkle in her eyes, as if she had been carrying a secret. "You seem different today," Robert remarked as they sat down. Maya smiled and leaned forward slightly. "That's because I've been thinking about something. The foundation is doing well, but I think it's time for the next step. I want us to take this mission global." Robert's eyes widened. "Global? That's a big step." Maya nodded. "Yes, but think about it. There are so many people around the world who need help. They need someone to believe in them, to see their potential. We've created something special here, but why stop at one city? Why stop at one country?" Robert sat back in his chair, considering her words. The idea of expanding the foundation's work beyond their current reach had never crossed his mind. The thought was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. "You're right," he said finally. "But it's going to take a lot of resources, a lot of planning. Are we ready for that?" Maya smiled, her eyes full of determination. "We're ready because we have something no one else has, heart. And that's what will set us apart. We've already proven that we can make a difference on a local level. Now, it's time to make that difference on a global scale." Robert's mind raced with possibilities. Expanding the foundation meant not just offering financial help. It meant creating sustainable programs, empowering people with education, and teaching them how to build better futures for themselves. It was the kind of work that would take years, but it was the kind of work that would leave a lasting legacy. "Let's do it," he said finally. "Let's take this global. We'll start small, but we'll make sure we're doing it the right way. We need to build partnerships, find the right people who believe in what we're doing." Maya's smile widened. "I knew you'd say that," she said softly. "You're not just building a foundation, Robert. You're building a movement." As they continued to discuss the logistics of expanding the foundation, Robert couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose that he had never known before. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of the unknown. He was excited by it. Together with Maya, they would bring the message of hope, empowerment, and change to the world. It wasn't just about giving back. It was about lifting others up, helping them see that they had value, that they were worthy of success, of love, of opportunity. Robert had found his true calling, and with Maya by his side, he knew that anything was possible. As Robert and Maya embarked on their mission to take the foundation global, the journey was far from easy. They spent months traveling to different countries, meeting with local leaders, organizations, and people in need. Every trip brought new challenges, but it also opened their eyes to the power of human resilience and the depth of need that still existed in so many parts of the world. They quickly realized that while their intentions were noble, they couldn't do it alone. It was one thing to have the heart to make a difference, but it was another to have the resources, the infrastructure, and the support needed to build something lasting. During one of their trips to Africa, they visited a small village in Uganda where families struggled to access basic healthcare and education. It was a place that had been overlooked by many, but Robert and Maya knew that this was exactly the kind of place that needed their help. They met with the village elders, the teachers, and the healthcare workers who were doing their best to make a difference, despite the many obstacles they faced. After spending several days in the village, Maya turned to Robert. "This is it," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "This is the place we need to start. This is where we begin to make a real impact. Robert agreed. They knew that if they could bring resources, training, and education to a place like this, they could create a ripple effect that would spread to other communities in need. But they also understood that it wasn't just about throwing money at the problem. It was about creating sustainable solutions that empowered the people in the village to help themselves. When they returned to the United States, Robert and Maya worked tirelessly to raise funds, build partnerships, and create programs that would support the people in Uganda. They established a healthcare clinic, a school for children, and vocational training programs for adults. The transformation in the village was nothing short of miraculous. Over the course of a few years, the people of the village began to thrive. Children who once had no access to education were now learning to read and write. The healthcare clinic provided life-saving treatments and vaccinations, and the vocational training programs helped adults develop new skills that allowed them to start their own businesses and support their families. Robert stood in the middle of the village one evening, watching the sunset as children played in the fields nearby. Maya stood beside him, her gaze focused on the same horizon. "We've done it," Robert said, his voice full of awe. "This is what it's all about. Giving people the tools to change their lives." Maya smiled, a small but proud smile. "This is just the beginning," she said. "There's so much more we can do. This is the first of many villages we can help." As they continued to expand their work, Robert and Maya's foundation became a beacon of hope for people all over the world. They partnered with other organizations, governments, and businesses to create programs that helped lift communities out of poverty, provide education, and improve healthcare. But even with all their success, Robert never lost sight of the lessons he had learned from Maya. The work was not about him. It was about the people. It was about seeing them for who they truly were and helping them achieve their potential. As the foundation grew, Robert found himself giving more of his time, not just to the work itself, but to the people who made it all possible. He spent more time in the communities they were helping, meeting with local leaders, and working alongside those who were benefiting from the programs. His heart was no longer tied to the bottom line. It was tied to the stories of the people he met along the way. The mothers who now had access to health care for their children, the young girls who were going to school instead of working in the fields, and the men and women who had found new hope for their futures. Robert's life had come full circle. The lonely CEO who once thought power and wealth were the ultimate goals now understood that the true meaning of success was not in what you could take from the world, but in what you could give to it. And as he looked at the progress they had made, he knew that the impact they had created together with Maya was just the beginning. There was more to do, more lives to change, and he was ready for it. Years passed, and the foundation Robert and Maya had built continued to flourish. Their work had spread across the globe, touching countless lives, but it wasn't just about the numbers or the projects anymore. It was about the people whose lives they had changed, the communities that had been given a second chance. Robert had come to understand that success was not measured by the size of his empire, but by the legacy he created through his actions. It wasn't about his wealth, his title, or his power. It was about what he did for others, and how he made them feel seen and valued. As the foundation expanded, Robert found himself spending less time in boardrooms and more time in the communities they served. He traveled from country to country, meeting people who had been given opportunities they never thought possible. Every time he heard a story of someone who had turned their life around because of the foundation's work, it reaffirmed his belief that they were doing the right thing. Maya had always been there by his side, a constant source of wisdom and strength. Together, they had built something powerful, something that would live on long after they were gone. One day, as Robert sat at his desk in the office that had once felt like his kingdom, he reflected on how far they had come. The man who had once measured his worth by the success of his business was now focused on something much bigger. The transformation wasn't just about the foundation, it was about his own personal growth. He had found the true meaning of leadership, not in the control of others, but in the service to others. Maya entered the room, her presence always calming. "We've come a long way," Robert said, looking up from his papers. "But we're just getting started, aren't we?" Maya smiled. "We are," she said. "But look at everything we've already achieved. The lives we've touched, the people who now have hope. I think we've done more than we ever imagined." Robert nodded, his mind filled with memories of all the people they had met along the way. The mothers who now had access to health care, the children who were learning in classrooms instead of working in fields, the young entrepreneurs who were building businesses of their own. He thought about the villagers in Uganda, the people in South America, the communities in Asia. They all had a story, a face, a life that had been transformed because of their work. And then he thought about Maya. She had been the one to help him see beyond the numbers, beyond the bottom line. She had been the one to show him the importance of truly understanding people, of seeing them for who they were, not just what they could offer. She had given him the courage to change, and through that change, they had created something beautiful together. Maya, Robert said, his voice soft with gratitude, I couldn't have done any of this without you. You showed me that the real power lies in helping others find their own power. Maya placed a hand on his shoulder. And you showed me that we can do more than we ever dreamed of if we believe in each other. Robert smiled, his heart full. He had found his true calling, and it wasn't in a boardroom or a mansion. It was in the eyes of the people whose lives they had changed. The future was uncertain, but Robert knew one thing. With Maya by his side, there was no limit to what they could accomplish. They had created a legacy that would live on for generations to come, and the work they had started would continue to inspire others to make a difference, just as they had. And as Robert looked at the world they had helped to shape, he knew that this was just the beginning. There was still so much more to be done, so many more lives to touch, and he was ready for whatever the future had in store. Together, they had built something that would last long after they were gone, a movement that was about much more than just giving. It was about empowering others to stand up, be seen, and take control of their own futures. In this powerful journey, discover the transformative power of connection and empowerment through Black stories. Follow Robert Keller, a wealthy CEO who once defined his life by business success, as he embarks on a life-changing path alongside Maya, a Black waitress whose wisdom reshapes his view on wealth and purpose. From a chance encounter at a wedding to a global mission to help those in need, this story explores the true meaning of success and how one person can make a difference. Through their work, they touch countless lives, building communities and inspiring hope. This journey is more than just about charity. It's about giving others the tools to succeed and creating a legacy that will last. Through the lens of Black stories, we see the value of understanding, empathy, and service. Robert's transformation from a driven businessman to a leader focused on giving back illustrates how helping others can bring true fulfillment. As they expand their mission globally, Robert and Maya prove that by seeing others for who they truly are, we can break down barriers and build a better world. Join them as they make a lasting impact, inspiring future generations through the power of Black stories. Their movement shows that by empowering individuals and communities, we can create a ripple effect of positive change that spans the globe. The foundation they've built is not just about charity. It's about creating opportunities, fostering connections, and helping others realize their worth. These Black stories not only highlight the struggles faced, but also celebrate the strength and resilience of individuals who rise above adversity to change the world around them. Don't miss this inspiring tale of transformation, leadership, and compassion that is bound to resonate with everyone, reminding us all of the power of seeing people for who they truly are.